so meeting cycle, this is in broad terms. So this is one way you can do it, but really a secretary kind of gets to define this process a bit, and it can be influenced by the personalities in your committee. So, on different like non-TUSA boards, I've had committee who are unresponsive, and I'm going to need to take a more proactive role as a secretary in those kind of boards, compared to sometimes I might have a general manager that prompts me very quickly. That's great. It makes my life easier, but you often won't have that as a student. So organising the meeting, this we've talked about, we've offered Doodle Poll. If you are planning irregular meetings, Doodle Poll can be good, but largely I would highly suggest that you set a meeting date and meet monthly at the same time, particularly after hours if you're a student. I mean, it depends on if you've got placements or not, but try and set a consistent time and you'll find attendance improves. And it might even be better to organise and set the date of the meeting at the previous meeting if you can and get consensus. But if you're doing an irregular meeting for whatever reason, Doodle Poll is very good. So then the secretary should send out a call for items, prompt people for reports. So different roles might have different reports, take apologies, and give people the invite to the link or to the meeting location or online link. Hybrid's usually good, making sure people can access online if possible. And I guess I wouldn't necessarily call for items. It depends on the formality of the meeting. Often your president will set the items, or if it's a recurring regular meeting, you might already have regular items that get reported on. So consider the appropriateness of the graphic. So then you pull together the agenda. The agenda TUSA template's good for that. You just pretty much get rid of all the red text and fill it out with your own information. And then you usually send it out via email, and you might have it stored in a Google folder that everyone can access. And making sure that historic records are maintained is an important role of the secretary. So then at the meeting, you get the chair or the president opening the meeting. Sorry, I'm just reading what Liam's saying. Also, items of other business provide an opportunity to raise unlisted items. Exactly. So within the meeting, there's a chance to raise minor items anyway. So I would argue that smaller calls for items doesn't need to happen. So at the meeting, you open the meeting. Usually there's an acknowledgement of country, and definitely TUSA recommend you do that. And we provide a specific acknowledgement. UTAS have acknowledgements for Hobart, Launceston, Rozelle and Cradle Coast, as well as online. So if you're stuck for who you should be referencing, they have you covered there. So it's important to do a bit of a head count, see who's there, check who are apologies, and note absences. Depends how strict your society is, and the level of commitment expected of your committee, but you might want to track absences just to make sure that people are actually engaging in the society if they're in a role. It depends on the role too. Any questions at this point? So then, you've opened the meeting, you've noted the time you've opened the meeting, and that's important, and as well as the date, but that should already be recorded in the agenda. You've noted absences, noted the people that are there. When you're doing that, it's important that you write people's last name, particularly for AGMs, but in general, it's much better practice to be writing people's last names. These documents don't have to be shared outside of your committee necessarily, with the exception of the AGM, but keeping a formal record of who's there is important, because if someone reads back these minutes in 5 years' time to understand a decision, they need to know who was in the room. So then you go on to previous minutes and matters arising is what we call it, but largely it's going through the actions list from the previous meeting, and making a note on anything that's changed, and then moving the minutes from the previous meeting. It's important that you know that only people that were at the previous meeting should be able to move the minutes of the previous meeting. In practice, I don't think many smaller organisations abide by this, but it's good practice. So you should try and make sure that it's people who are kind of regularly at the meetings who move. Then correspondence. You might have received correspondence inwards or outwards. So, if TUSA were a society and I emailed the Environment Society something important, I might capture that and call it outgoing correspondence. It's really up to you what level of correspondence you might consider worthwhile putting in the minutes. I think that it really depends on if it affects the governance of the organisation. So if it's about a significant decision or if it's about a high level thing, or if you want the whole society or the attendees of the meeting to know about that correspondence. But a lot of things don't need to go here. So then you've got your reports that the secretary has previously chased. Strongly recommend that if you've circulated reports on time, maybe a week before the meeting, ideally, and people are expected to read them, then don't waste time reading out everything that you wrote down. It's not efficient. Highlight things. So if there's particular things that you need to debate, communicate, discuss, do that. If there's recommendations or motions you want to make, so, you know, that the society spend $500, then that's what you have to talk about. And it should be recorded in your report if possible, but it's okay to raise motions without them being recorded in a report. As long as they are, you know, raised, seconded, and passed, and that should be in the minutes. So then after reports, you might talk about other general business. It might be about the date of a next event or, you know, other action items and follow up, and other businesses an opportunity, as Liam said, for people to raise other issues they might not have raised before. So it's a more informal way to do that. And then you close the meeting. It's important to talk about the time that you close the meeting. So make sure you record that. And then after the meeting, the secretary writes up the minutes. Here it says, yeah, we circulate them via email, and make sure you record them somewhere. Usually an online type of tool is best, though we're talking about, we also need to consider security of those platforms, but you should keep a record. When you're writing up the minutes, or whoever's writing up the minutes, just as a note, try and write in third person. Try not to name individuals unless they've asked to be named, like if they've made a statement. Just make it clear the flow of the conversation. It doesn't have to be large, and capturing action items and decisions is most important. And if you can do it straight after the meeting, do it while you remember. That's about it for this. Cool.